by 2050, the demand for food will be 70 to 100% higher.
A technique for imaging biological molecules has produced its highest quality pictures to date.
Where artificial intelligence is being used.
I'm going to delve deep, really deep, to find out more.
Oh, and I should warn you, you're about to see wriggling, writhing larvae. It's pretty gross. I'm Emma Keeling.
And I'm Shini Somara.
And you are watching a Razor End of Year episode special.
As you can see, we've gathered here on this cold, fresh air day in a COVID-safe location of West London to look back on 2020.
And because Shinny and I need more friends, we're lucky enough to be joined by our fellow Razor reporters, Colan.
Hi.
Guy Henderson.
Hello there.
And our newbie, Frankie McCamley. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Frankie, you missed out on a bit of early jet setting, but have you managed to get out and about?
Well, I know you guys have been jet setting around the world, but I got to go to Cambridge. And in times like this, that is amazing to just get out of your house at least. It's been so good joining the team. I mean, everyone knows their stuff in such great detail that, you know, for me, coming over to the science team, I really needed to learn my stuff. And my first report was going to the Laboratory of Molecular Biology.
Wow, jumping in right at the deep end.
And interviewing a Nobel Prize winner. So getting to meet people like that in times like this is pretty amazing.
The background in structural biology is that probably 1960, there were no detailed structures of biological molecules. That's all the enzymes, the muscle proteins, hemoglobin in the blood, and so on. The crystallographers who were having atoms and high resolution, they used to say, these electron microscopists, they're only looking at blobs. So we were called blobologists.
I got to see this technique that can see individual atoms inside protein molecules. It was incredible. It's something I've never seen before, and this is the future. And being able to see that was really, really cool.
So this is where it all happens.
Welcome to the microscope.
Okay.
Should we have a look inside?
Absolutely. So this is the microscope.
This is where the magic happens.
This is huge. Wow. That is incredible. I've never seen a microscope that big.
Most of it is used for creating a vacuum and producing the electrons.
Oh yes, we've all been chucked in the deep end. Joe, you got chucked in the deep end. You swam very well. How was 2020 for you?
Well, I'd have to say it's been a really peculiar year, you know, not something that we anticipated. We started 2020 off to a fantastic start because we all got to get on with filming Razor, travelling, you know, doing what we do, and then suddenly everything came to a grinding halt. But we mobilised really, really quickly. I think, you know, we can sort of thank our entire team for just really rolling with what the pandemic brought. And so working from home, having to set up Zoom calls, you know, all of our fabulous DIY rigs with piles of magazines to get the right camera height and so forth. And we were very lucky, I think. All of us feel very honoured to have been able to interview all of those scientists and doctors and researchers really at the sort of front lines of the pandemic, the people who were really having to figure out how on earth do we deal with COVID-19. And I know that you and Shinny especially conducted an enormous amount of really important interviews, and I think we all learned a lot as a result, being part of Razor and watching what each other was doing, and really benefiting, I think, from that sort of, you know, right on the cutting edge, groundbreaking information that was evolving as the months went by. I think one of the downsides, you know, there was the work and the content that was incredibly rich, but I also think there was an aspect to the year that's been quite lonely because in our work we get to go out and meet people and really work as a team. We have a fantastic team who works together and we've missed each other. You know, we were all stuck indoors and we didn't get to travel, we didn't get to be amongst all the scientists in the laboratories doing the work that they do. But luckily, you know, the lockdown lifted and we were able to sort of get back together and we're here together now reminiscing. So I guess the year is ending on a good note.
I had to make my own tea in lockdown. It was shocking. But anyway, I mean, we all suffered a little bit. But it was a privilege to talk to all those people at the forefront of the COVID-19 research as well. But you actually got out of lockdown, I mean, legally, and Into the wilds you went, Joe. Tell us a bit more about those stories.
I did. I set out to sea. Put my sea legs on. We got to film a story off the coast of Devon, and we filmed with the UK's largest offshore rope-cultured mussel farm. So this boat is the Holly May that's coming in. Good morning. I didn't really know anything about aquaculture and mussel farming beforehand, I have to admit. And it wasn't what I expected, and I was just really blown away, and it really sticks in my mind as a highlight this year because I really love the fact that you can introduce something into a natural environment and really just let nature take its course. And the ropes that are used in rope-cultured mussel farming are fibrous, and what that does is it provides a habitat for basically mussel larvae, so floating larval cells that are in the sea naturally anyway, and it gives them something to attach to. And what was incredible on the day, the 2 days that we were out at sea, is that you see these ropes, these lengths of rope being pulled out of the ocean that are so thick and just, you know, heavy with mussels that wouldn't have otherwise grown and attached to something. They wouldn't be there. And so you've got farming that's introducing nothing, you know, in terms of feed or machinery. You're simply hanging ropes, and what you get after a few months are these gorgeous, lustrous, juicy, you know, nutritious mussels.
Hey, that is a whopper.
That is beautiful, the big mussel, gorgeous colours as well. Yeah. And a little known fact, the shells of mussel sequester carbon. So, you know, a little happy coincidence on the side.
Guy, what was your favourite moment of 2020?
So many to pick from in such an unusual year, Shinny. I mean, for me personally, certainly one of my favourite moments was travelling out of Berlin to this abandoned ex-military airfield from the Cold War era to film this story about this actually quite simple concept taken from the idea of railways, which have these big cables above them, translating that into essentially road technology. So you put these lines on highways, electric trucks can travel along them. They could lift up this piece of equipment called a pantograph, connect it to the wires, and just like a train, it would connect to an electric charge, and it would essentially be able to charge while it's moving along. And yes, this was a story which was essentially an idea of a big company, Siemens, and it would be tempting to think that there would then be this sort of big corporate PR machine behind it. But actually what we found when we got there was this whole team of people at this quite spectacular setting who were so passionately invested in the idea, right from, you know, the spokesperson who we were walking around with, who's the head of the E-Highway, right down to the truck drivers and the technicians involved. Everywhere we went, they really did think that this was an idea that was going to change the world, and that was an amazing thing to see.
So this is part of the E-Highway system?
It's actually the key component.
Okay.
Because this device, which we call the pantograph, the connecting device, that allows this truck to contact the contact wire while driving and providing the truck with electric energy. And that's basically the key innovation which we have in this system.
And I think there was just this little moment towards the end of the film we were making, which kind of summed that up, where we were sort of demonstrating how this pantograph works. We were driving along the highway, and the driver was explaining to us exactly how this thing works and how it charges as it goes. And it just sort of became this quite ad-lib conversation.
It's you must have it, and then you can drop.
And so it's at this point you can only put the system back up manually, but you just push a button. Simple as that. Nice job.
Thank you.
Seeing your expression in that truck was absolutely classic. You look like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good giggle, and these guys were really enjoying themselves, which isn't always the case. What about you, Emma?
I know it's been a bit weird, like we have been on another planet this year, but I was on Mars. Before lockdown, I went to Mars. Fortunately, I didn't actually have to sort of leave the country because it's weird. All over the world, you've got all these different groups. It's not just governments like, you know, NASA and you know, Russia who are flying off to space. You've got all these different groups around the world who are working on ways of how do we get to space and how do we get to places like Mars. So we actually went to Austria and we spoke to the Austrian Space Forum. And they're just working on analog ways, which is basically just staying here on Earth and looking at how you do the minute detail to make sure it's really efficient, so that when astronauts do end up on Mars, they're not going to make any mistakes. So they talked about fail big and fail big now, and then it won't affect you when you're up in space. But we went to Airbus, and they had been helping to build the Rosalind Franklin rover. Now, sadly, it was meant to take off this year, and it missed the window because they hadn't got the parachute sorted for the lander. And so, we've got the Chinese are gone, and the Americans have gone, but the old Rosalind Franklin, she's still on the ground, and so it'll be another couple of years before she gets up there. But they've got this Mars yard, and it's just like a giant sandpit, and it's full of all this, coloured sand that's as if you're on Mars itself. And then they've got a great big sort of picture along the back wall, which is the Mars landscape. And this is all sort of so they can muck around with the cameras to sort of adjust them. And they've got rocks there so they can practice, for the rovers to go over the rocks. And I don't know why, but in my head I had this idea of, it was like a dune buggy and it was going to be roaring around. And then they said, right, here's the rover. And I said, oh, great, can you bring the rover up into the sandpit? And this thing moved about an inch a second or a minute, it felt like. And so we were waiting forever. But of course, can't go fast, got to save its energy, and it's got to make sure that it doesn't tip over, because that would be a bit of a disaster. So that was a pretty amazing story to cover. And then I had bugs. I ate larvae this year. It was pretty special. The cameraman actually dared me to do it, and I was like, right, I am going to do it. I ate 8 in the end. I mean, can I eat this? Is it safe to eat?
Yeah, of course, go for it.
I'm going to give it a try. Oh, it's a little bit crunchy. Oh, it's kind of nutty.
Yeah, definitely.
And as you can see, my hair is glistening, shiny, black soldier fly larvae. Now, we won't be eating these anytime soon, but it's incredible. These guys, entocycle they're called, and there's a number of groups around the world that are doing this. So they're basically harvesting these black soldier fly larvae, and they're using them as protein to feed animals. And it's instead of, sort of getting all the soy and knocking down all the forest to grow soy and raping and pillaging the oceans for all the little fish to feed animals. Instead, you've got these flies, and it only takes a few weeks for these things to mature, and then they can feed these to animals. Great source of protein, amino acids, and I wasn't lying when I talked about the shiny hair. These things are really good for you, apparently. So yeah, eating bugs, that was my highlight. Beat that, Shinny. Come on, what was yours?
I don't know if I can beat that. It's amazing. No, what I love about Razor is the fact that our stories are all so different, and what I have to say is my favourite is the dark matter story that I did. That was truly a journey, and I felt like we were taking the Razor audience with us. And it was a story of many parts. It started at Royal Holloway University in London, and then it ended up in Canada. And the connection between those locations and learning about dark matter and having this amazing analogy that ran through the entire episode, which was about snooker. And snooker really allowed me to understand more about dark matter.
We're going to imagine that this white ball here is our dark matter particle. So let's imagine that we can't see that white ball. What we can see, though, are ordinary atoms on the Earth. And that's represented by all the balls down at the bottom of the table. So let's imagine our dark matter particle is going to enter our detector and collide with some atoms. If you imagine we can't see the white ball, we could still infer that it's here on the table because of the motions of all the other balls on the table.
Right.
And so our dark matter detectors are doing exactly this.
Dark matter and dark energy makes up 95% of the universe. Doing this story made me realise just how amazing it is, how incredible, and how much research is going into discovering something that we still haven't found yet, despite this incredible lab that they've built 2 kilometres underground. And if I had to choose one moment from that episode, it would be going down that mine shaft. The idea of having 2 kilometres of rock sitting on top of you. We started at the crack of dawn. It was dark when we got into the mine shaft, and then it was really dark, darker than I've ever seen underground. I think it's something that will stay with me for life.
Here we are. Woo!
Just the idea of the physics they're doing down there. You know, the detector, the technology, all of the ingeniousness and sort of innovation that's going into coming up with these experiments to try and find something that no one has found yet. I mean, they're trying to find the white snooker ball, essentially, and they're looking at how all the other snooker balls are ricocheting off this white snooker ball, and they're still looking. And I actually asked one of the scientists, you know, what happens when you find dark matter? What then?
It would get boring if we actually find dark matter, because then pretty much it's okay, it's there. So now what? Everybody else, okay, well, it's the game is over. It's somebody found it. It's not where we are looking for.
The joy is in the search. They want to keep looking, and I think this is science at its absolute best. And yeah, definitely a favourite for me.
For more science, behind-the-scenes insights, groundbreaking research, and even some fun, check out our Razor podcast. Search Razor Sounds on all major streaming platforms, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on any episodes.
Hi and welcome back to this Razor special where we're looking at the highlights of 2020. It may seem a weird thing to do considering we've already suffered through this pandemic. However, we're now going to give out some awards because there's been some incredible stories this year. Joe, I mean, if you could hand out an award to somebody you've spoken to this year, who would you give your award to?
It's a tough one, but I think honestly I'd give it to the people who are operating the beeline. It's a series of wildflowers that are being sort of threaded throughout the United Kingdom so that our pollinating insects have places to go in between stops. And so I didn't really know much about it before, but our bees and our pollinating insects are tending to come out sooner because the temperature has changed, our climate has changed, and so they're being signalled earlier on towards the end of winter, very early on in the spring before there are many flowers around. And so there's a lovely organisation called Beeline that are planting these lines of flowers essentially around the country. The chap we were out in the field with was just lovely. He kind of is a one-man band, incredibly passionate about what he's doing, really knowledgeable and just exactly the kind of personality who you want to give an award to because he's sort of galvanising the general public to really get behind this initiative.
Creating beelines, putting that connectivity back there is absolutely essential for certainly the continuation of the kind of lifestyle that people are used to. It would be a very dull and boring world if we were to lose our pollinators. You'd go back to just having things like conifers and ferns, like it was in prehistoric days before all this wonderful abundance of florid beauty was created.
What about you, Frankie?
Well, Joe, my award would definitely go to the urban vertical farmers. I just thought it was such an interesting story and I had never seen anything like this before. And I walked into this building and it was this old converted school right in the middle of London and I'm thinking, is there really a farm here? I think I've been led up the garden path.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Frankie. Nice to meet you.
Hi, am I in the right place? It doesn't feel like you've got a farm growing here.
Yes, we've got two to show you today.
But I opened the door and sure enough, there was this big farm. And what they'd done is they were growing small vegetables on trays and they just went up and up and up and up and you kept going and they were as far as the eye could see and we're in this crazy purple light. So our eyes are adapting, the cameras are all adjusting, going, whoa, how are we going to deal with this? And it was so interesting. There was wasabi, there was broccoli, you name it, it was there. And they were growing these microgreens. And I think the interesting part about this is they had taken the old technology and developed it into this new technology. And there's this part where they've completely revolutionized urban vertical farming. And you've got all of these vegetables growing on trays that switch every 12 hours. So they're in dark and they're in light. And then as this is happening, you've got broccoli trays going past you, going down little ramps. It was absolutely bizarre and I've never seen vegetables on the run before. And I'm watching all this happening and on top of that, I got to try some of these vegetables and these small little microgreens, they're called.
That's the strongest. Basil.
Super strong. It makes the most amazing pesto.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Do you often...
I might take some home every so often.
The taste was incredible. And I would just say that was amazing. It was so much fun. The team were really great, and I think they are at the forefront of vertical farming, and I can't wait to see the future of that. Emma, you've had some amazing times.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of those weird years. I was going to be one of the annoying people and sit on the fence and say, I want to give it to all the scientists because, I mean, the collaboration across, all these different, groups and labs, and it's all the different countries. I mean, the politicians might be arguing, but all the scientists are working so hard to solve this pandemic problem. And, the people that are pushing aside their own research to work on COVID. So maybe there's a little bit of that. I'd love to give that award to everybody. But if I had to focus, I'm going to say biome. And these are the guys who are working on mycelium. So this is mycelium, is you've got the fruiting body, as they call it, the mushroom on the top. And the mycelium are those little threads that sort of go through the ground underneath. And what these little threads are doing is they're actually decomposing things like wood and the forest floor and things like that. They call them the janitors of the world, which is pretty cool.
I think there's some here.
Oh, wow. Look at those beauties.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's little threads, is that it?
There's the mycelium.
What they're doing is they're taking mycelium and they're actually growing them into insulation panels. You might not know that the construction industry is probably one of the worst polluting industries we have. And so what they're trying to do is take some of that pollution out. So they're taking mycelium and they're sort of popping it on some grains, and this stuff just grows, it feeds, and then it puffs up. It looks a little bit like fluffy porridge, but it's, it's fungi. And it just grows and grows. They feed it a bit more, and then they sort of push it into these containers, and they make panels out of it, insulation panels that'll be going into the walls of your house. And the wonderful thing about this is, it's great for your health, because they don't have that sort of the nasty plastics and all that sort of thing going on. They're also very warm, and also they're great for sound. So maybe great for a sound studio. And they're working on all these different things that one day you'll probably be able to build a house out of all this sort of waste, like orange peel and grains and cocoa beans and things like that. So I think that's just one of those fantastic things. We're going back to nature and we're solving pollution problems, and once again, nature's got all the answers, so pretty fantastic. Shinny, what about you?
Well, same problem. There are just so many incredible people to choose from, but I'm going to go with a very different choice because many of the people I've interviewed for Razor have already won awards of some kind, and so I'm going to go with Avi Schiffman, a 17-year-old who basically put together a website all about COVID. He used a technique called web scraping. And, this kid essentially used some really high technology to provide us all with key data. It was at a time when all of us were scrambling around, not knowing much about COVID. And there he was developing this website that had so much important data from all over the world. Governments were actually going onto this website. And, I think what I loved most about RV was the fact that he was so blasé.
It shouldn't have to be hard to find the information. With my website, it makes it really easy. It's just a simple dashboard you can look at. Let's say you wanted to check up on your entire family, and each one of them lives around the world. You don't have to go to 7 different government websites just to see your individual countries and stuff. Everything is just all in one place. So
one of the characteristics he had was that he admitted that he's just not very good at school. Yet he had all these people calling him for his skills in web technology. And so, yeah, definitely deserves an award from me. Guy, what about you?
Shinny, I think my award for this year would have to go to a Danish startup called MySkin, which we went to see right at the beginning of this year, pre-pandemic. Health tech, obviously health, a big theme this year. But what was interesting about this particular company is on the face of it, it was quite challenging as a TV story because it was an app, which is quite a hard thing to make a TV story out of. It's just this thing on a phone. And secondly, they were quite modest and quite cautious about how they termed and how they described this app. They were careful to say that this was something that was designed to assist, to try and see whether you were at a high risk of having melanoma, a form of skin cancer. But they were very careful about saying it's not actually supposed to diagnose on its own.
This is one of the feature set is really focused on a close-up image, where you can take several images over time to kind of identify if this mole is changing or developing in any way. And then we have elements where you have a more holistic view of this, and where you take photos of your skin areas, of your body parts, and with some of our technology you can get some support of identifying if new things is coming.
But as we delved into this story, what became apparent is the implications, the potentially vast implications of this piece of technology, quite modest on its own. But essentially it was one of the first apps, health tech apps of its kind, to be approved by any regulator anywhere in the world. And they and some of the health experts we spoke to as part of the piece were very much of the view and confident that this was sort of the first step in a broader sort of evolution of healthcare, where there were going to be many more powerful tools available to assist with healthcare, even moving towards diagnosing cancer.
We can teach AI to find early signals of diabetes, congestive heart failure, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and actually alert the clinician much sooner, and intervening sooner will cost less, be of benefit to the patient, and produce much more greater long-term value than simply curing. Prevention is indeed still the best cure.
We're sitting here talking about all these incredible science and tech achievements, but let's face it, no end-of-year show would be complete without a few clips of, well, things that didn't quite go to plan.
I've come to Imperial College London to see how scientists are decoding brain signals, effectively allowing people to control devices with their minds. Should I do that again?
Yeah, go ahead. Right, you take this way.
Let's go. Okay, I'm this way. Lovely.
You're this way.
Oh, I'm locked out.
You're locked out.
So this is Kenny. Are you going to ask me or am I going to have to tell you?
Who's that?
Quiet, please.
The first solid
cryogenic electron microwave.
Bees pollinate a third of our food. Sorry.
I'm locked out.
It's not a matter of if, but when. Sorry.
But only limited amounts of it are found here on Earth.
In the past, it's straight there. Sorry.
To find out more about the revolution resolution. I did it wrong.
Great. Brilliant. Can we look?
Wow. Gosh.
Now you made that one.
Okay, that's good. Okay, try
This
to
is
take,
thrilling television, isn't it? Hey, it's like watching paint dry.
Yeah, can I offer my hand? Beginning. Okay. Okay, you step on one side first, all the way down, and then go up. Okay. Wiggle waggle plate. Actually, that's the unofficial name.
Started on Mars this year, and
There's a blooper.
and that, I guess, brings us perfectly back to here.
It's been an amazing year. Thank you all so much for watching Razor.
And don't forget, you can catch up on past episodes on the CGTN website and social media channels, as well as Razor's very own YouTube channel.
Just type in Razor Science Show to YouTube and it will take you straight there. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button for notifications.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye. Bye.
It's finished. But don't worry, we've got a lot more Razor stories for you. All you need to do is like, comment and subscribe and hit the bell button below for notifications. We'll see you next time.